Hello and welcome to Alternate Football History, where we look at the great what-ifs of the beautiful game and attempt to predict what may have happened if football had taken a different course. Today we'll be asking, what if Yugoslavia didn't break up?
In the late 1980s, there was a lot to be optimistic about in Yugoslavian football. In 1987, Yugoslavia won the FIFA World Youth Championship and were declared the best group of young players in the world. The 90s were set to be a golden generation for Yugoslavia. This was further supported by the 1991 European Cup final, in which Yugoslavian side Red Star Belgrade became champions of Europe after beating Marseille in the final. This team would include a 21-year-old Vladimir Jugovic, a 22-year-old Robert Prosinecki, a 22-year-old Sinisa Mihailovic, a 24-year-old Dejan Savicevic, and the winner of the 1991 European Golden Boot, Darko Panchev. However, in the following years, the dream of this team would be over as Yugoslavia began to break up. Today, there are 7 countries in UEFA that were formerly part of Yugoslavia. We have Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Montenegro, Kosovo, and North Macedonia. I've looked through all the notable players that would have been eligible for a united Yugoslavian team and created a squad for each national tournament from 1992 to next year's Euros. Considering at least one former Yugoslav nation qualified for every tournament that they would be eligible for since 1992, I'm going to be assuming that Yugoslavia qualified for each international tournament. It goes without saying that I'm not a professional football manager, and it's extremely unlikely that I would have correctly predicted each one of those Yugoslavia squads. In deciding which players to choose for to go to each tournament, I've done plenty of research and decided based on a few key factors. How good were they? Who were they playing for at the time? How old were they? And most importantly, were they being called up by their respective national teams at the time? As I'll be looking at each tournament in some depth, this series has been broken up into 5 parts, looking at 3 tournaments per video. This first video looks at Euro 92, the 1994 World Cup and Euro 96. So let's get started and look at how they would have fared. Yugoslavia actually qualified for Euro 92 and even went as far as to name a squad before the Yugoslav wars prevented them from actually playing. Famously, they were replaced by Denmark, who would go on to win the whole thing. As the squad had already been named, I haven't made many changes, but there are some exceptions. Darko Panchev, for example, pulled out of the squad for political reasons. I've gone with a standard 4-4-2, as that was the most common formation at the time. Sinisa Mihailovic would drop into centre-back, despite the fact he wouldn't make a permanent move to that position until we played at Sampdoria 2 years later, but it would be the position that would best suit this team. Midfield pair Dejan Savicevic and Dragan Stojkovic would be the stars of the show, and also found themselves with new clubs after the World Cup, signing for AC Milan and Marseille respectively. Branko Brnovic would be essential in allowing them the freedom they needed to provide for star striker Darko Panchev, who would come second in the Ballon d'Or later that year. Yugoslavia would also have the option of Robert Prosinecki off the bench, who had just suffered an injury-filled debut season at Real Madrid. Taking Denmark's place, Yugoslavia would be drawn in a group with Sweden, France and England. France and England were poor, so Yugoslavia would be likely to get through the group and into the semi-final. However, without the spirit and fairy tale story of Denmark's run, Yugoslavia would lose to a talented Netherlands side in the semi-final, bringing an end to their tournament. On to the 94 World Cup in the USA, where no Yugoslav nations were eligible and many players missed an opportunity to show their talents on the world's biggest stage. This also means I have complete freedom to pick the squad I think would have gone to the World Cup, based on individual talent, where they were playing, and who was being chosen for the former Yugoslav nations. The 94 World Cup would see Yugoslavia switch to a diamond formation, which was fairly common at the time and also suited Yugoslavia's midfielders, with Vladimir Jugovic the only wide man who could even be considered ahead of the likes of Stojkovic, Savicevic and Prosinecki, the latter of whom had just had 2 successful seasons at Real Madrid to put him ahead of Jugovic in the pecking order. Elsewhere, new into the starting lineup, we also find Drazen Ladic, Robert Jani, Slaven Bilic, Slavica Jukanovic and Sevilla striker Davor Zucker, who had just scored 27 goals in the season running up to the World Cup. Milan midfielder Dejan Savicevic recently starred in the club's 4-0 Champions League final win over Barcelona, so would likely be the star of the show. With the likes of Boban and Boksic to come off the bench, Yugoslavia would certainly be an exciting attacking team. In a tournament full of upsets, with Sweden and Bulgaria reaching the semis, Yugoslavia would certainly be hopeful of going that far. I fancy them to reach that stage, but there they would meet a Brazil team whose attacking talents of Babeta and Romario would make them one of the only nations who could outscore Yugoslavia. Or they would meet an Italy side who may be one of the only nations to nullify the Yugoslav attack, with the likes of Alessandro Costacurta, Paolo Maldini and Franco Baresi. Therefore, I predict Yugoslavia to once again reach the semi-final stage. Going into Euro 96, Yugoslavia only consisted of Serbia, Montenegro and Kosovo, and along with Bosnia and Herzegovina were not yet ready to compete and declined to enter qualification. Slovenia and Macedonia entered but failed to qualify, leaving Croatia to be the only representative at the tournament, as they would go on to reach the quarter-finals. This would again be representative of the Yugoslavia team, with 7 Croats in the starting lineup, as they stick with the diamond formation. The only changes to the lineup would be Zvonimir Boban and Dario Simic coming in for the aging Stojkovic and Stanojkovic, although the former still makes it into the squad. Savicevic would again be the key playmaker, although Boban and Prosinecki would certainly bring their own flair. Up front they again have Davor Zucker, who made the team of the tournament and famously chipped Peter Schmeichel for Croatia. This Yugoslavia side also has great depth, with Tudor, Stojkovic, Stanic, Jugovic and Boksic all capable of making an impact off the bench. Croatia lost to Germany in extra time through the golden goal rule, but if you were to add the likes of Mihailovic, Jokanovic, Savicevic and Mijatovic to the team, it would be enough to win against Germany. If this team were good enough to beat a strong Germany side, which I don't doubt, they would beat England in the semis even before it goes to penalties, and then comfortably beat the Czech Republic in the final, becoming champions. Therefore, I believe that this golden generation of Yugoslav players would have gone on and won the Euros in 1996. That seems like an excellent place to end part 1 of this series, with Yugoslavia's golden generation becoming arguably the best side in Europe. After getting to the semi-final stage of both Euro 92 and the 1994 World Cup, they finally win the first international tournament in the nation's history with Euro 96, lifting the trophy at the historic Wembley. Some of you may say that I have overrated this set of Yugoslavian players, but looking at them as individuals playing for the best sides in Europe, there are many genuinely world-class players in this team. With a good manager, I don't doubt for a second that they would have brought the success that I've predicted. Anyway, next time we'll look at how Yugoslavia would do at the 98 World Cup, Euro 2000 and the 2002 World Cup had the breakup not happened earlier that decade. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the first part of this series. If so, don't forget to like and subscribe to see more alternate football history videos and find out what would have happened next with the Yugoslavian national team. We're really trying to get this channel kick-started and can only do that with your help. Once we get going, we can deliver higher quality, better edited videos to justify the topics we want to look into. Thank you and good night.